Welcome to Echo Audiobook Hub, your destination for immersive storytelling. In this fan-made Harry audiobook, dive into an alternate universe where Harry Potter is sorted into Slytherin house. Experience familiar characters in new roles, unexpected alliances, and dark secrets that could change the wizarding world forever. The great Hall of Hogwarts shimmered with candlelight, floating above hundreds of anxious faces as the sorting ceremony began. The enchanted ceiling mirrored a stormy sky, lightning flashing faintly through the clouds. Harry Potter stood among the nervous first years, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain everyone could hear it. He could still feel the echo of Hagrid's words from earlier that day. "You're a wizard, Harry." Still trying to make sense of it all, he barely knew what magic was, let alone what a house meant. Yet now, every eye seemed fixed on him. The boy, who lived as Professor McGonagall, unrolled a long parchment. "When I call your name," she said, crisply, "you will come forward. Put on the sorting hat and sit on the stool." Names were read, and one by one, students were sorted. Cheers rising from the four house tables. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Harry swallowed hard as he watched Draco Malfoy stride confidently forward. Slytherin. The hat had shouted almost instantly, to the smug cheers of the green and silver table. Ron whispered beside him, "Imagine being in Slytherin. You'd rather leave, wouldn't you?" Harry nodded without thinking, though he didn't know why. Something about that name, Slytherin, felt heavy, dangerous, and yet strangely magnetic. Finally, Professor McGonagall called, "Potter, Harry." The hall erupted into murmurs and whispers. The hat was placed on his head, falling slightly over his eyes, and the world seemed to fade away into silence. Then, a voice spoke softly inside his mind. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. And a thirst to prove yourself, Oh my. Yes. Very interesting." Harry froze. The hat could talk. His hands gripped the stool, his thoughts spiraling. "Not Slytherin," he whispered under his breath. "Not Slytherin." The hat chuckled darkly. "Not Slytherin. You could be great, you know. It's all here. Your ambition, your drive, your hunger to belong. Slytherin could help you on your way to greatness. There's no doubt about that." The whisper deepened, echoing through his skull. "Or you could join Gryffindor, like your parents. Brave, yes, but ordinary. Safe. Predictable." Harry's heart raced. He didn't want to be ordinary. He'd lived his whole life being unwanted, invisible. A boy shoved into cupboards and called a freak. For once, he wanted to be seen, respected, powerful. You want to prove them wrong? The hat murmured knowingly. You want to show them what you're capable of. And at that moment, Harry hesitated. A spark, something raw and restless, stirred deep within him. Yes, he thought. I want that. The hat smiled in his mind, sly and satisfied. Then it had better be. Selway H. Ryam! The shout echoed through the hall like thunder. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Harry. In Slytherin. Someone whispered. Dumbledore's blue eyes flickered with something unreadable. Draco Malfoy's smirk widened as he clapped loudly, and the Slytherin table erupted in cheers. Ron's face fell in shock. Hermione blinked in confusion. Harry sat frozen for a moment, as if he hadn't heard correctly. But the green and silver banners waving before him made it clear. This was real. Slowly, he rose from the stool and made his way to the Slytherin table, feeling the eyes of every student burning into him. Whispers followed him like shadows. The boy who lived, a snake, is supposed to be the next Dark Lord. Someone hissed. Yet as Harry sat down among the cheering Slytherins, he felt something strange stir within him. A quiet satisfaction, a pulse of belonging he'd never felt before. Draco leaned across the table and extended his hand. Told you we'd see each other again? He said with a grin. Harry hesitated only a moment before shaking it. Around them, the Slytherin prefects smiled approvingly. Welcome home, Potter, one said smoothly. Across the hall, Dumbledore began his speech, his eyes resting on Harry for just a moment, filled not with disappointment, but curiosity. Welcome. The headmaster began. To another year at Hogwarts. Let us celebrate new beginnings and the choices that define who we truly are. Harry's gaze drifted upward, toward the ceiling. The storm clouds had parted slightly, revealing a sliver of moonlight that fell directly on the Slytherin table. It shimmered like a silver snake's skin, glinting with quiet power. In that moment, Harry didn't feel ashamed or afraid. He felt chosen. Maybe this was where he was meant to be all along. Not as the boy who lived, but as someone far more mysterious. Someone who could shape his own destiny. The meal began, and food appeared magically across the tables. Yet Harry barely noticed. His thoughts were spinning. He could feel the curious gazes from other houses, the murmurs of students wondering what kind of person Harry Potter truly was. He wondered too. Somewhere deep inside, he felt that tonight had set something in motion. Something ancient, hidden, and powerful. The hat's words echoed faintly in his mind. You could be great, you know. And for the first time in his life, Harry didn't dismiss the idea. He embraced it. Across the table, Draco and the others laughed quietly, talking about classes and Quidditch. Harry listened, observing learning. Every Slytherin word was sharp, strategic, layered. This was a house that valued strength, not pity. It didn't matter who your parents were or what your past held. It mattered what you could become. And, as the feast drew to an end, Harry realized something profound. Might have been the house of heroes, but Slytherin was the house of kings. When the prefects led them down to the dungeons, through torch lit corridors and echoing stone passages, Harry followed silently, his footsteps steady. The air grew cooler, the walls slick with moisture, and the faint hiss of flowing water filled the tunnels. Finally, the prefect spoke a password. Pure ambition. And the wall melted away to reveal the Slytherin common room. Emerald lights glowed beneath the surface of the black lake above, casting rippling shadows across the ceiling. Green fire danced in marble fireplaces, and the furniture gleamed like polished obsidian. It was beautiful, cold, elegant, and utterly unlike anything Harry had ever seen. As he looked around, he felt the weight of his choice settle comfortably in his chest. This was not a mistake. This was fate, twisting in unexpected ways. As he lay in bed that night, the faint hum of the lake above him, Harry closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I'll show them all." Outside, the moonlight shimmered over the castle towers, and somewhere, deep in the darkness, something ancient stirred. Watching, waiting, for the boy who would one day be known not as the boy who lived, but as the Prince of Slytherin. First morning in Slytherin house dawned beneath a dim green glow, filtered through the dark waters of the black that loomed above the dungeon ceiling, casting wavering patterns across the stone walls like the scales of a serpent. Harry awoke to the quiet whispers and low laughter of his new housemates, voices sharp as daggers and smooth as silk. Draco Malfoy was already awake, buttoning his crisp school robes and glancing approvingly at his reflection in the mirror. "First day of classes," he said with a smirk. "Let's make sure people remember us, Potter." Harry nodded silently, still adjusting to the strange mixture of pride and unease that came with being a Slytherin. The dormitory, though cold, held a dark beauty. The silver lamps, the carved serpent motifs curling around the bedposts, and the faint hum of ancient magic in the stones themselves. As they made their way through the common room, the older students offered nods of acknowledgement, some with approval, others with suspicion. Harry could feel their eyes on him, weighing his worth, questioning whether the boy who lived truly belonged among them. When they reached the great hall, the whispers began again. Gryffindor stared, Ravenclaws gossiped, and Hufflepuffs looked uncomfortable. Harry sat at the Slytherin table between Draco and a quiet, dark-haired boy named Theodore Knott, who seemed to study everything with calm detachment. Breakfast was a blur of clinking plates and murmured spells as letters swooped in from the ceiling on the wings of owls. A large, sleek black owl dropped a note in front of Draco, who read it and grinned wickedly. "Quidditch trials next week," he said. "You fly, Potter." Harry shrugged, taking a sip of pumpkin juice. "A bit," he said, not wanting to boast about flying for the first time in Madame Hooch's class. Draco's grin widened. "Fit right in." After breakfast, Professor Snape swept past the tables, his black robes billowing like storm clouds. His eyes, dark and cold, landed on Harry for the briefest moment, unreadable. "Potter," he said quietly. "Ooh." His voice barely more than a whisper, yet it cut through the noise of the hall. "Word." The room fell into hushed curiosity as Harry stood, following Snape, out of the great hall. They walked through narrow, torch-lit corridors that twisted like the roots of an ancient tree, until they reached the potions classroom. The air was cool and smelled faintly of herbs, ink, and something sharp, like iron. Snape turned, studying Harry with that same piercing stare. "I do not know what game the Sorting Hat is playing," he said finally, his tone controlled, but edged with disbelief. "But Slytherin has high standards. You will either rise to meet them or you will be crushed by them." Harry met his gaze, feeling an unfamiliar heat in his chest. Not fear, but determination. "I'll meet them," he said quietly. For a moment, Snape's expression flickered, as if he saw something unexpected. "We shall see," he replied, and dismissed him with a wave of his hand. By the time potions began, the classroom was alive, with the bubbling of cauldrons and the rustle of pages turning. The Gryffindors filed in, led by Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley, both of whom shot Harry uncertain looks. Snape began his lecture, his voice silky, yet cold, gliding over the ingredients for a simple draught of peace. When he asked questions, Hermione's hand shot up every time, But Snape ignored her, his eyes fixed instead on Harry. "Potter," he said suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry froze. He didn't know. He hadn't even opened his potions book the night before. Hermione's hand trembled in the air, but Snape's gaze remained locked on Harry. "I don't know, sir," Harry admitted. A smirk tugged at the corner of Snape's mouth. "Fame clearly isn't everything," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. A few Gryffindors snickered, but Draco leaned over and whispered, "Ignore him. He's testing you." Harry clenched his jaw and focused on his cauldron, determined not to make another mistake. By the end of class, his potion was a shade too dark. But it didn't explode. And that felt like a victory. As they left the room, Draco clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll learn," he said. "Snape's harsh, but he respects power. Earn it, and he'll notice." That evening, after dinner, the first years gathered in the common room, where the prefects introduced them to Slytherin's unspoken rules. "We protect our own," said Gemma Farley, a sixth year with sleek black hair. "We don't betray secrets. We don't show weakness. And above all, ambition is your weapon." Her gaze swept across the group, lingering on Harry. "World already expects greatness from you, Potter. Don't disappoint us." Later, when the others had gone to bed, Harry lingered near the window, watching the murky shapes of lake creatures gliding beyond the glass. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of ancient enchantments. He thought about the Sorting Hat's words. "You could be great, you know." A part of him feared that power. Another part craved it. As he turned to leave, a faint whisper echoed behind him. "Harry Potter." The voice was thin, almost hissing, barely human. He froze. "Who's there?" he asked quietly. No reply. The fire flickered green, casting strange shadows on the walls. For a moment, Harry thought he saw the shape of a serpent winding through the reflection of the lake. He blinked. And it was gone. He told himself it was nothing, just nerves or imagination. But when he finally lay down in bed, the sound returned. Soft, distant, like words slipping through water. "He's here. The one marked by lightning. The one who will awaken the dark." Harry sat up sharply, his heart hammering. "Draco," he whispered. But his roommate was fast asleep. The whisper faded, leaving only the slow rhythm of the lake pressing against the glass. Harry lay back, staring at the ceiling, a chill creeping down his spine. The next morning, He told himself it had been a dream. Yet something about the way the shadows moved in the corners of the common room felt different, alive. During breakfast, he caught Snape watching him again from the staff table, his expression unreadable. Strange dreams? Draco asked casually, noticing Harry's tired eyes. Does that to some people. The dungeons remember things. Harry didn't reply. His gaze drifted upward to the enchanted ceiling, where the faint light of dawn shimmered like green fire. Somewhere deep inside the castle, he could still feel that whisper lingering in the air, waiting. It was as though Hogwarts itself was watching him, testing him, pulling him deeper into its hidden secrets. That day, as they hurried to Transfiguration, Hermione caught up to him, her tone cautious. Harry, are you all right? You seemed different yesterday. Ron scowled beside her. Different. He's in Slytherin. That's what's different. Harry looked at them both, and said quietly, maybe that's not such a bad thing. They stared after him, confused and uneasy. As he turned away, his black robes sweeping behind him like the whisper of shadows. For the first time, Harry felt in control, not just of his magic, but of his story. Whatever darkness lurked beneath Hogwarts, it had chosen him. And as he walked back, down into the dungeons, that evening, the cold stone corridors no longer felt like cages. They felt like home. The days that followed were a blur of new spells, whispered rivalries, and unspoken rules, and Harry began to learn that being a Slytherin meant far more than ambition. It meant survival. The Slytherin common room, with its dim green light rippling across the ceiling, and the deep hum of the Black Lake pressing against its walls, became both sanctuary and battlefield. Friendships here were not given. They were earned through wit, subtlety, and strength. Draco Malfoy had quickly taken on the role of unofficial leader among the first years, and though his arrogance grated at times, Harry found himself drawn to Draco's confidence, his instinct for power, and his understanding of how to navigate Slytherin's labyrinth of hierarchy. Theo not remained distant, but observant, while Blaise Zabini spoke little, yet always seemed to know more than he let on. Millicent Bulstrode and Pansy Parkinson often whispered in corners, their eyes darting toward Harry, as if measuring him for something greater or more dangerous. The entire house seemed to watch him in quiet expectation, waiting to see if the boy who lived could live up to his legend within their ranks. Classes had grown more intense, particularly under Snape's watchful eye. The potions master seemed to oscillate between disdain and a strange, protective curiosity whenever Harry was around. One afternoon, while brewing a simple, sleeping draught, Harry noticed a small rune carved into the base of his cauldron. A serpent entwined with a lightning bolt. When he asked about it, Snape's expression tightened. "Do not concern yourself with things beyond your understanding," he said curtly, though his gaze lingered on Harry, a heartbeat too long. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. He found himself standing before the emerald fire of the Slytherin common room, the flickering light reflecting in his eyes. Draco appeared beside him, as if summoned by thought alone. "You feel it too, don't you?" Draco murmured. "This place, it hums. It's like it knows us." Harry nodded slowly, his pulse thrumming in his ears. "It's alive," he said quietly. "It remembers." Draco smirked, eyes glittering. "Then we should learn what it remembers." The next evening, after curfew, Draco, Harry, Theo, and Blaise crept through the dungeons. Wands lit, the faint glow of lumos casting long, snake-like shadows along the stone floor. The air grew colder the deeper they went, until the sound of dripping water echoed like a heartbeat. They stumbled upon a corridor none of them had seen before, lined with statues of serpents coiled around ancient pillars. At the far end, a massive iron door loomed, etched with strange runes that shimmered faintly under their wandlight. "What is this place?" Theo whispered. Draco stepped forward, tracing one of the runes with his finger. "It's old magic," he said. "Older than Hogwarts itself, maybe." Harry approached the door, drawn to it by something he couldn't name. When his hand brushed the metal, the runes glowed brighter, and the serpents carved into the door seemed to move, their stone eyes flickering with emerald light. A hiss filled the corridor. Soft, ancient, familiar. The others froze, but Harry understood it, not as sound, but as meaning. "Welcome, Hare." He stumbled back, heart hammering as the glow faded. "What did you do?" Draco demanded, eyes wide. "Nothing," Harry said quickly, though his voice trembled. He didn't know how to explain it. That the hiss had spoken to him. That it had recognized him. They retreated in silence, each of them shaken, though none willing to admit it aloud. Back in the common room, the others went to bed without another word. But Harry remained awake, staring into the fire until dawn. The whisper from the door still echoed in his mind. "Welcome, Hare." He didn't understand what it meant, but deep down, a part of him wanted to. The following week, their first flying lesson arrived. and though it was shared with Gryffindor, Harry felt more confident than ever. Madam Hooch's instructions barely left her mouth before Harry's broom rose at his command, swift and steady. When Neville Longbottom lost control and fell, Harry's instinct to help kicked in. But instead of fear, he felt exhilaration as his broom soared through the air effortlessly. Draco snatched Neville's, dropped Remembrall, and taunted him, flying circles above the other students. "Catch it if you can, Potter," he shouted. Without hesitation, Harry launched after him. The wind rushed against his face as he closed in on Draco, their brooms darting through the open sky like dueling falcons. Draco tossed the Remembrall, and Harry dived, heart pounding, catching it mere inches from the ground. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Even Professor McGonagall, who had rushed out at the commotion, looked torn between anger and astonishment. That evening, word spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. Harry Potter, the Slytherin Seeker. His appointment to the Quidditch team was unprecedented for a first year, and Slytherin House erupted in celebration. Emerald banners hung from the ceilings, and even the older students raised their glasses to him at dinner. "You've made history, Potter," Draco said proudly. "A first-year seeker. Snape must be thrilled." And though Harry noticed the faintest smile ghost across Snape's lips during the feast, he knew it wasn't pride. It was something more complicated. Perhaps fear. Perhaps hope. Over the next few days, the bond among the Slytherins deepened. Harry trained tirelessly with the team, learning precision, strategy, and control from Marcus Flint, their hulking captain, who, despite his roughness, treated Harry with respect. "You've got instincts," Flint said gruffly. "Don't lose them. Slytherin needs clever flyers, not just brave ones." But not everyone celebrated Harry's success. The whispers from other houses grew sharper. "A Slytherin hero. He's no better than Malfoy." Even some professors looked at him differently now, unsure how to treat the boy who lived wearing green and silver. Hermione tried to talk to him once in the library. "You're changing," she said softly, almost pleadingly. "You don't have to prove anything." Harry had simply smiled. "Maybe I do," he replied. That night, the Slytherin common room buzzed with laughter and victory songs after another Quidditch practice. Yet beneath the noise, Harry felt something else stir, a strange connection between him, Draco, and the others, something that felt like loyalty, like shared purpose. The Slytherin bond wasn't about friendship in the way Gryffindors understood it. It was about power and unity, about protecting one another from the rest of the world. As the firelight flickered across their faces, Harry realized that he no longer felt like an outsider. These were his people. They might be cunning, ambitious, even dangerous. But so was he. And when Draco leaned in, eyes gleaming, and whispered, "One day, Slytherin will rule again," Harry didn't disagree. Later, lying awake, Harry thought of the iron door in the dungeons and the word that had called to him. Hair. He didn't know whose hair he was meant to be, or what destiny waited beyond that door, but the idea of it sent a thrill through his veins. For the first time, his scar didn't burn. It pulsed, as if responding to something ancient beneath the school. The lake shimmered faintly above, and the castle groaned in its sleep, whispering secrets only he could hear. Harry closed his eyes, the serpent's hiss curling like smoke in his mind. Whatever power lay hidden in the shadows of the dungeons, it had chosen him. And this time, he would not run from it. He would claim it. The chill of late autumn had settled over Hogwarts, and with it came the realization that magic was far more than wands and words. It was willpower made real, and Harry was beginning to understand that no house grasped that truth better than Slytherin. The castle itself seemed to whisper to him now, its torches flickering brighter when he passed, its shadows lingering longer, as if listening. Harry had grown stronger in his studies, his spells sharper, his control more precise. In charms, he had mastered Wingardium Leviosa faster than anyone, though he had done so silently. His wand movement fluid and exact, while others flailed with exaggerated swishes. Professor Flitwick had given him a curious nod of approval, and Draco had smirked proudly beside him. But it was in defense against the dark arts where Harry's potential truly began to emerge. Professor Quirrell's stammering lessons were often a mess. Yet Harry found himself drawn to the darker theories hidden between the lines of the textbook. The way certain spells could bend, twist, or even dominate another's will, if executed with enough precision. Quirrell said one afternoon, his voice trembling, "Magic is fueled by intent, not emotion. Fear weakens, anger consumes, but intent directs." The words clung to Harry long after class ended, echoing in his mind like a spell itself. That night, he practiced for hours in the dim light of the common room, testing his limits with minor hexes and shielding charms until exhaustion finally dragged him to bed. Yet, even in sleep, his dreams were filled with whispers, Snakes slithering through corridors. Voices murmuring from ancient walls. And a pair of cold, red eyes watching him from the darkness. Quidditch training intensified as the first match of the season drew near. Marcus Flint drilled the team relentlessly, shouting commands over the roar of the wind. As they raced through the night sky, Harry's flying had become instinctual, his broom responding as though it were alive beneath him. "You're a natural," Flint grunted. After a particularly sharp dive. But don't just rely on talent. Anticipate. Control. Dominate the field before the other team even knows you've moved. The words echoed the lessons of Slytherin itself. Control was everything. During one brutal scrimmage, Harry narrowly avoided a bludger that would have broken his arm. Instead of fear, he felt a surge of exhilaration. The thrill of mastery. The moment when danger bent to his will was intoxicating. By the time they flew back to the ground, his robes were torn, his hair windswept, and his eyes gleamed with a cold focus that even Draco found unsettling. "You've changed, Potter," Draco said with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I like it." As weeks passed, Harry began to sense the undercurrents that ruled Slytherin life. The common room was divided into invisible circles of influence. Pure blood legacies who clung to family prestige. Ambitious students who clawed their way upward through charm and cunning. And the few quiet ones like Theo, not, who preferred to observe from the shadows. Yet somehow, Harry moved between them all with ease. His fame was both shield and weapon. Some sought his favor, others his downfall. Draco, ever proud, began to treat him more like an equal than a trophy ally. Together they formed an unspoken alliance. Harry's quiet strength balancing Draco's sharp wit. They worked together in potions, flew together at practice, and often sat late by the green fire, discussing the world beyond Hogwarts, the ministry, power, bloodlines, destiny. Draco spoke of his father's influence, the dark arts, and the coming changes in the wizarding world. Harry listened, intrigued, but uncommitted. He didn't crave blood purity or domination. He craved control. Control over himself, over his story, over the strange magic that seemed to hum beneath his skin like a living current. It was during one late night study session that something extraordinary happened. Harry had stayed behind after curfew, practicing spells from an advanced dueling book borrowed from the restricted section, courtesy of a whispered password from the ever resourceful Draco. The spell was simple in theory. Protego. Diabolica, a defensive ward that repelled anything with hostile intent. But as Harry raised his wand and focused, something inside him surged. Something ancient, coiling and fierce. His magic exploded outward in a flash of green flame that circled him like a living serpent, hissing softly before vanishing into the air. The room fell silent, and for a heartbeat, Harry felt as if the castle itself had through him. His heart pounded, his wand pulsed warm in his grip, and a strange calm settled over him. He didn't tell anyone what had happened, not even Draco. Some things, he knew instinctively, were meant to be kept secret. The following day, Snape summoned him to his office. The dungeon chamber was lit by low candlelight, shadows dancing across jars filled with preserved ingredients that looked far too alive. "Potter," Snape began, his tone unreadable, "it has come to my attention that certain wards have been disturbed." Harry's blood ran cold, though he said nothing. Snape studied him closely, his gaze probing, searching. "You possess a talent for raw power," he continued softly. "But power without discipline leads to destruction. Remember that." Then, almost as an afterthought, Snape added, "Your mother understood that lesson well." The words caught Harry off guard, and before he could reply, Snape turned away, his voice low. "Go. And be careful what you awaken." Harry left, confusion and defiance warring within him. In the days that followed, he threw himself into his studies and Quidditch training. But the sense of something awakening beneath Hogwarts never left him. Sometimes, when he walked the lower corridors alone, he could feel the castle pulse faintly beneath his feet, as though it recognized his magic. The whispers in Parseltongue had returned too, faint like echoes from another world. "Power accepts you. The chamber watches." The words sent chills down his spine, yet he couldn't turn away. Every night, he felt more connected to that dark pulse under the school, as if it were guiding him somewhere, teaching him in silence. Finally, the day of the Quidditch match arrived. The sky was heavy with clouds, the crowd roaring as green and scarlet banners waved across the stands. Harry's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the wind as he kicked off from the ground, the world falling away beneath him. He spotted the golden snitch glimmering near the Slytherin goalposts, but Gryffindor's seeker, a tall, fierce-looking boy, was already diving. Harry leaned forward, his broom surging like a living creature. The wind tore at his robes, and for a moment, the world narrowed to a single, golden point. Then, as lightning cracked overhead, he stretched out his hand, and caught it. The crowd erupted. Slytherin's cheers filled the air, echoing off the castle walls like thunder. That night, the common room celebrated until dawn. Cups of butterbeer floated through the air, and emerald flames flickered brighter than ever. Yet beneath the laughter, Harry felt something stirring deep inside him. A whisper, a presence, ancient and approving. As he stood near the fire, watching the green light dance across the faces of his housemates, he understood what Snape had meant. Power was neither good nor evil. It was a force to be shaped, commanded, mastered. And he would master it. He had begun to see what Slytherin truly meant. Not treachery or cruelty, but the will to rise above weakness, to bend destiny instead of obeying it. As the firelight glowed, brighter, reflecting in his emerald eyes, Harry felt the castle breathe. Again, whispering from its stone depths the same word that haunted his dreams. Here. The corridors of Hogwarts had grown colder, as winter crept over the castle, and though blanketed the towers and courtyards above, the dungeons below pulsed with an eerie, restless energy that seemed to breathe through the stone itself. Harry had begun to feel it more often now. A deep vibration in the walls, a hum beneath the ground, as if the school were alive and aware of him. Since his victory at the Quidditch match, the whispers had grown louder, more distinct, curling through his dreams and seeping into his waking thoughts. At first, he had tried to ignore them, convincing himself they were remnants of exhaustion or echoes of the wind through the ancient pipes. But when he began to hear words, hair, open, awaken, he knew it was something else entirely. The Slytherin common room became a place of quiet watchfulness. The emerald firelight, flickering over faces, that now treated him with a mix of respect and fear. Draco noticed the change first. "You're distant, Potter," he remarked one night, lounging in an armchair, as the lake's shadows rippled above them. "You're thinking about something." Harry looked up from the parchment before him, where he had been tracing runes he didn't remember learning. "Have you ever wondered," he asked slowly, "if this castle hides things even the professors don't know about?" Draco smirked. "Of course. Hogwarts was built on secrets. But some doors aren't meant to be opened." Harry met his gaze, his green eyes glinting in the dim light. "What if they're meant for us to open?" The question hung between them, like a spark waiting to catch flame. A week later, Harry found himself wandering the dungeons alone. After hours, his footsteps echoing softly against the cold stone. He didn't know what had drawn him there. Only that the whisper had returned, calling him gently, but insistently. This way. Come. Hare. The voice was neither male nor female, but serpentine, sliding into his thoughts like smoke. It led him to the same iron door he and Draco had discovered weeks ago, its surface shimmering faintly with runes that pulsed as he approached. This time, the hiss in his mind was louder, urgent. Without hesitation, Harry lifted his wand and whispered a word that rose unbidden to his lips. Open. The door shuddered. The serpents etched upon it, slithering aside as if alive, and with a low rumble, it parted. A rush of stale air poured out, carrying the scent of damp earth and old magic. He stepped inside, the light of his wand spilling over walls covered in carvings, snakes, eyes, and words in a language that stirred something ancient within him. He could understand them, though he had never seen them before. They spoke of power, of legacy, of the founder who had shaped Hogwarts with a vision that time had twisted into myth. Salazar Slytherin, the carvings whispered, the true architect of ambition. In the center of the chamber lay a circular stone platform, engraved with a massive serpent coiled around a single word. Harry's breath caught. He swallowed hard, his pulse thundering in his ears, and whispered, "Hello?" The chamber responded, not with an echo, but with a low hiss that slid through the air. Here. The voice came from the walls, the ceiling, the very ground beneath him. Harry's wandlight flickered as a faint mist rose from the carvings. "Who are you?" he whispered. The hiss coiled closer, almost tender. "You are my blood. The hare, the one who will awaken what sleeps." Harry stumbled back, his mind racing. "I'm not. I don't even know who you are," he protested. The voice chuckled softly, the sound like the rustle of scales. "You know. You feel it. The magic that moves through you. The serpent's gift." Harry's scar burned faintly, but not in pain. In resonance, as though something deep within him was answering. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because," the voice whispered, "you were chosen not by blood, but by destiny. And destiny always finds its own." He awoke hours later in his bed, unsure how he had returned. His wand lay beside him, faintly warm, and the whisper still lingered in his ears. For the next few days, he couldn't focus. In potions, he nearly added the wrong ingredient. Earning, sharp. Rebuke from Snape, who studied him with eyes that seemed to see too much. "Your concentration is slipping," Snape said, his tone low. Whatever distractions plague you, end them before they destroy you. Harry nodded. But his thoughts were elsewhere. On the chamber, on the carvings, on the feeling that something vast and ancient was watching him. Then Draco confronted him. You went back there, didn't you? He accused. You found something. Harry hesitated, then nodded. There's a chamber, he said softly. Old. Powerful. I think it was built by Slytherin himself. Draco's expression flickered between awe and fear. What did you see? Harry looked away. Not see. It spoke to me. Draco's eyes widened. You're saying it talked to you? Harry met his gaze steadily. Yes. It called me the Hare. Silence filled the space between them, heavy and electric. Draco exhaled slowly. If that's true, then you're standing in a place meant only for Slytherin's bloodline. Harry frowned. But I'm not. Draco cut him off. Maybe not by blood. But magic doesn't lie. The castle itself has chosen you. The words settled over Harry like a shroud. Chosen. He didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. Over the next week, the whispers came more often, sometimes in class, sometimes in his sleep. They didn't command. They guided. Learn control. Power must serve purpose. The time will come when the castle will test you. And slowly, Harry began to understand. This wasn't a curse. It was a lesson. Late one night, when the dormitory was quiet, Harry sat by the window, overlooking the dark waters of the lake, the reflection of the moon shifting like liquid silver. He thought of the voice, the chamber, the serpents, and the strange, growing certainty that Hogwarts was revealing itself to him piece by piece. The other students saw him as gifted, lucky, or dangerous, but Harry knew better. Power was not a gift. It was a responsibility. One that demanded understanding and sacrifice. He would not run from it. The castle had shown him something other students would never see: the thin line between light and darkness, and the truth that greatness demanded a balance of both. The next morning, as snow drifted past the castle windows, Snape caught him after class. You've changed, the professor said quietly. You're seeing things others can't. Harry hesitated. How do you know? Snape's lips thinned. Because I've seen that look before. In your mother's eyes. The look of someone who walks too close to the edge. Harry said nothing, but Snape's words lingered. He wasn't walking toward darkness. He was learning from it. There was a difference. That night, as he drifted into uneasy sleep, he heard the whisper once more, soft, approving, endless. Soon, hair. Soon the serpent will awaken. And though the words should have frightened him, Harry smiled, faintly in the dark, his green eyes gleaming with the reflection of something far greater than fear. Purpose. Winter had settled heavily over Hogwarts, casting long shadows across the snow-laden courtyards, and cloaking the castle in a silence that felt almost watchful, as if the very stones were listening. For most students, it was a time of laughter, warm fires, and preparation for the holidays. But for Harry Potter, the season carried a strange weight, a quiet tension that pulsed in the air like static before a storm. Ever since his encounter with the Whispering Voyagins, in the chamber beneath the dungeons, he had felt its presence lingering just beyond his thoughts, a constant hum of awareness that made the castle's walls seem to breathe around him. He had not told anyone, not Draco, not even Snape, of the full truth of what he'd seen and heard that night. But something within him had shifted. The voice had changed him, sharpened him, and he didn't yet understand its full meaning. He sensed that every choice he made now mattered deeply. And it was in this state of quiet turmoil that his friendship with Draco Malfoy began to evolve into something far more dangerous. At first, Draco had been fascinated by Harry's story of the hidden chamber, pressing him for details and theories, his silver eyes glinting with curiosity and ambition. "If what you're saying is true," Draco whispered one night in the common room, leaning close, so that even the fire couldn't overhear. "Then you found something that could change everything. Imagine what my father would say if we proved Slytherins."
Legacy still lives!
But Harry didn't share Draco's excitement. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that the chamber, and whatever intelligence lurked within it, was not something meant to be used as a symbol or a weapon. It was deeper than that, older than ambition. "This isn't about proving anything to your father," Harry said quietly, his gaze fixed on the green flames. "This is about understanding what's been hidden. The castle wants to show me something." Draco frowned. "The castle doesn't want anything, Potter. It's a building." Harry shook his head. "You haven't heard it. You haven't felt it breathe." Draco studied him. Then, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features before he masked it with a smirk. "You're starting to sound like one of those mad Ravenclaws." But even as he teased, there was a shadow in his eyes, a wary respect, and maybe, deep down, fear. In the weeks that followed, The two boys began spending more time together, often sneaking out after curfew under the pretense of exploration. They roamed the lower corridors with enchanted lanterns, discovering forgotten classrooms, ancient tapestries, and half-collapsed passages that hadn't been used in centuries. Yet, Harry always felt the same pull, guiding him deeper toward the heart of the castle. One night, the whispers led them to a vast, abandoned hall lined with cracked mirrors. "What is this place?" Draco murmured, his voice echoing. Harry raised his wand. "A memory," he said softly. As they explored, one of the mirrors rippled like water, and Harry saw, just for an instant, a reflection that wasn't his own. A boy with black hair and green eyes stood in Slytherin robes, older, colder, more regal. The image smiled faintly before fading. Harry stumbled back, his breath catching. "Did you see that?" Draco turned sharply. "See what?" "Someone was there," Harry said, his voice low. "In the mirror." Draco frowned. "You're imagining things." But Harry wasn't so sure. That face. It hadn't been just a reflection. It had felt familiar. Their explorations soon became a whispered rumor among the younger Slytherins, who began to speak of the Hare's patrols, though none dared confront them directly. The teachers seemed unaware, or perhaps simply uninterested. But Snape's dark gaze lingered longer on Harry each day, his expression unreadable. "You've been restless," Snape remarked one afternoon after class, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "I trust you aren't wandering where you shouldn't." Harry met his gaze steadily. "Just studying," he replied, and for a moment, Snape's lips twitched in what might have been amusement or warning. "Curiosity," he said softly, "is the first step toward danger. But then, danger seems to find you easily." Harry didn't respond. He couldn't. Because part of him knew Snape was right. Danger was no longer something he stumbled into. It was something that called to him, whispering from the dark places beneath the school. As Yule approached, the great hall was transformed into a glittering expanse of silver and green. With icicles hanging from the enchanted ceiling, and the smell of pine drifting through the air. Yet even in the midst of the celebration, Harry couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. During one feast, he caught Dumbledore's gaze across the hall. Calm, twinkling, but somehow knowing. The headmaster smiled faintly before turning away, and Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "He knows something," the voice inside him whispered. "He always knows." That night, Harry dreamed of the chamber again. This time, the serpent carved in the stone moved, its eyes glowing emerald. You must choose. Hair. It hissed. Friendship binds. Power divides. But both cannot last. Harry awoke with a start, his heart pounding. The words burning in his mind. During a quiet study session in the library, Draco confronted him. "You've been distant," he said, keeping his voice low. "You're hiding something." Harry looked up from the ancient spellbook. He'd been reading and met his gaze. "Would you believe me if I told you the castle speaks?" Draco stared at him, then leaned back slowly. "I'd believe you're either special or cursed." Harry smiled faintly. "Maybe both." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, Draco said, almost hesitantly, "If this power, whatever it is, can be controlled, you can't face it alone." Harry's eyes darkened. "No," he said softly. "But I'm not sure you should face it with me." Draco's expression hardened. "You think I'm afraid?" "I think," Harry replied, his voice quiet but sharp, "that you don't understand what you're asking to be part of." Their friendship, once simple and sharp, edged, began to strain under the weight of secrets and ambition. Yet beneath it all, there was still loyalty, an unspoken bond forged in shared danger. When Crabbe and Goyle mocked Harry for his late night absences, Draco silenced them with a single glare. When a hex went awry in potions and nearly hit Harry, Draco blocked it without hesitation. They were rivals, allies, and something more. A reflection of each other's best and worst instincts. But even Draco could sense the growing darkness coiling around Harry. The subtle shift in his voice, the way his magic seemed to answer before his wand even moved. Once, during a duel practice, Harry cast a shield so powerful, it knocked Draco off his feet and shattered 3 desks. As Draco struggled to rise, Harry's expression was calm, detached, until realization flickered across his face, and he rushed forward to help. "I didn't mean," he began, but Draco cut him off with a grim smile. "Yes, you did. And that's what scares me." By the time the Christmas break arrived, the lines between friendship and rivalry had blurred completely. Draco left for the holidays, promising to write, but his parting words lingered with Harry. "Whatever you find in that chamber, Potter, don't let it consume you." Harry watched him go, the echo of the serpent's whisper rising in the silence. Dangerous, but necessary. That night, as snow drifted softly past his window, Harry sat alone in the common room. The green flames flickering in his reflection. he could feel it again. The power beneath Hogwarts, stirring like a sleeping dragon, ancient and patient. Friendship, loyalty, fear. None of it mattered now. The voice had been right. There would come a time when he would have to choose between them. And as the shadows deepened, and the castle breathed around him, Harry knew that the choice, when it came, would define not only who he was, but what he would become. The castle was silent after the holidays. Its echoing halls, stripped of laughter, its cold corridors, whispering secrets through the drafts that wound around torchlit corners. Harry had chosen to stay behind, while most students returned home, drawn by a feeling he could neither name nor resist. He told himself it was to study, to prepare for exams, but deep down he knew it was the voice, the serpent's whisper, that held him here. The nights had grown longer, darker, and the power beneath Hogwarts pulsed with new life, beating in time with his own heart. On the first night of the new term, he dreamed again of the chamber. The massive serpent, coiling around the stone days, its emerald eyes gleaming with knowledge older than time. You seek power, the voice hissed, echoing through the dreamscape. But power without purpose is destruction. Learn the balance, or be devoured. When Harry woke, his scar burned faintly, and the taste of ancient air still clung to his breath. He knew what he had to do. It was time to return to the chamber, not as a curious boy, but as a student, ready for his first true lesson. That night, beneath the waning moon, he slipped through the dungeons, his footsteps guided by instinct and whisper. The serpentine door greeted him once more, cold and alive, its runes glowing faintly as if in recognition. Open, he commanded in Parseltongue, his voice steady. The door obeyed instantly, parting with a hiss of air that smelled of stone and secrecy. The chamber beyond glowed faintly with green luminescence, and the carvings on the walls seemed to shift when he looked at them. Portraits of serpents that turned their heads to follow him, eyes flickering with subtle life. At the center, the great stone serpent waited. Its scales shimmered faintly in the light, and when Harry approached, its eyes flared open. You have returned, it whispered, its voice filling the chamber, vibrating through the walls. You feel it now, don't you? The power beneath your skin. Harry nodded, unable to speak. Good, the serpent hissed approvingly. Then you are ready to learn. A wave of cold air swept through the room as symbols along the walls began to glow. Ancient runes flaring to life in perfect rhythm with his heartbeat. Magic. The voice said, "Is not the art of reciting words or flicking wands. It is the language of intent." The founder understood this. He built this place not for those who followed, but for those who listened. Harry felt the truth of those words resonate within him. He closed his eyes, letting the hum of the chamber merge with the pulse of his magic. The serpent spoke again, its tone low and deliberate. "You must unlearn what they have taught you. Forget incantations. Forget the wand. Magic flows from will, not from tools." Hesitantly, Harry lowered his wand. "How?" he asked quietly. "By feeling." The serpent whispered. "Focus. Picture the energy that binds this room, the magic that built these walls. Draw it to you." He did as commanded, breathing slowly, reaching out with his mind. At first there was nothing. But then, like the slow rising of a tide, warmth spread through his chest, flowing into his fingertips. The air thickened, vibrating faintly around him. "Good," the voice murmured. "Now, command it." Harry opened his eyes. The torch nearest him flared brighter, then dimmed again. A thrill ran through him. He raised his hand slightly, and the flame responded, bending toward him like a living thing. "Yes," the serpent hissed. "You are learning the first truth. Magic listens to strength, not words." The hours that followed blurred into a haze of discovery and exhaustion. The serpent guided him through exercises of focus and control, teaching him how to manipulate the elements around him. Heat, air, even shadow. Each lesson was both revelation and burden. For every ounce of mastery demanded an equal measure of restraint. Power without control consumes. The serpent warned again and again. Many have sought it. Few have survived it. By dawn, Harry could feel the raw energy humming just beneath his skin. His mind sharpened, his senses heightened. The serpent's final words before he left the chamber were etched into his mind. "When the time comes, you will not need to speak to command. You will simply will it so." In the days that followed, subtle changes began to show. During charms, his spells seemed to respond faster, more instinctively. In potions, ingredients obeyed his movements as though aware of his intention. Even Snape noticed. "Your precision has improved," he remarked one afternoon, his black eyes studying Harry intently. "And yet, there is something unnatural about it." Harry met his gaze calmly. "I've been practicing." "Practicing what?" Snape asked softly. "Control," Harry replied. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Snape turned away, his robes billowing behind him. "Be careful, Potter," There are lessons not meant to be learned too quickly. Meanwhile, Draco's letters had grown colder. He wrote of his father's ambitions, of whispers in pure blood circles that spoke of hair's rise. If you found something down there? Draco's last letter read. Be sure it's you using it, and not the other way around. Harry folded the parchment without replying. Draco didn't understand. He wasn't being used. He was being taught. The serpent's lessons weren't dark. They were necessary. Hogwarts itself was preparing him, shaping him into something more than just the boy who lived. He could feel it in every heartbeat, every flicker of his growing control. One evening, as he stood on the frozen courtyard, overlooking the forbidden forest, he sensed the wisp. Not from the chamber this time, but from the shadows of the forest beyond. The lesson is not yet complete, it murmured. The serpent teaches power. The forest teaches consequence. Before he could react, a gust of cold wind swept across the grounds, and Harry felt something stir deep within him. A ripple of magic, wild and untamed. He raised his hand instinctively, and the snow swirling in the air froze mid-motion, suspended like stars, before falling gently to the ground. He stared at his hand in awe. The serpent's voice echoed faintly in his mind. Control. Never fear your power, Hare. Fear only the day you lose command of it. That night, Harry returned once more to the chamber, compelled by the whisper's final command. The serpent awaited him, its emerald gaze unblinking. You have taken your first step, it said. But remember, this every gift demands sacrifice. The stronger you become, the more the world will try to break you. Harry met its gaze fearlessly. Then let it try. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then the serpent smiled. Or perhaps it was just a trick of the light. So be it, it whispered. The serpent has chosen its student. As Harry left the chamber, the door sealing shut behind him. The echoes of the serpent's voice lingered in his mind, soft and eternal. Power is neither light nor dark. Hare. It is the shadow between. And as he walked back through the empty corridors, the moonlight gleaming on the dungeon stones, Harry Potter finally understood that he was no longer merely a student of Hogwarts. He was becoming something the world was not ready for. A master in the making, molded not by fate, but by choice. The days that followed Harry's return from the chamber were cloaked in a strange calm, the kind that comes before storm, a stillness that hummed beneath the surface of daily life at Hogwarts. To everyone else, he was simply quieter, more focused, his green eyes distant, as though fixed on something only he could see. But inside him, something was shifting, deep and unseen. The serpent's lessons had left an imprint, not only on his magic, but on his very spirit. A whisper that lingered in the corners of his mind, a pulse that beat in rhythm with his own heart. At times, it felt as though he could sense the castle breathing, each brick alive with memory and intent. Magic no longer answered his wand. It listened to his thoughts, bending to his will even before he spoke. It thrilled him and terrified him. For every act of control, there came a whisper of consequence, a shadow trailing behind his every success. When he conjured light, it flickered darker at the edges. When he summoned warmth, the air chilled afterward, as if the balance of his magic demanded payment. It began in small ways, a candle flaring too bright, a parchment curling into ash, whispers of serpents in the corners of his hearing. But soon, the voice returned, not as a whisper this time, but as a presence, steady and intimate. The serpent gives, but it also tests. Harry's dreams grew more vivid. He saw himself standing in a vast, dark mirror, his reflection no longer his own. The boy in the mirror was taller, older, with eyes that glowed faintly green, and a confidence that bordered on cruelty. "Who are you?" Harry would ask, and the reflection would smile faintly. "I'm what you're becoming." He'd wake, drenched in cold sweat, his scar prickling faintly, his magic humming restlessly beneath his skin, like a caged storm. During the day, he threw himself into study and practice, desperate to stay in control. Yet even his professors began to notice the strange edge in his magic. During defense against the dark arts, when Professor Quirrell asked the class to demonstrate a disarming spell, Harry's Expelliarmus blasted the practiced dummy clean across the room, shattering it into splinters. The class gasped. Powerful spell, Mr. Potter?" Quirrell stammered, his wide eyes betraying both awe and fear. Harry muttered an apology, but his hands trembled. Not from guilt, but from exhilaration. He could feel the power now, thrumming like lightning beneath his skin. That night, he stood before the mirror in the Slytherin dormitory and stared at his reflection. The boy, staring back, looked the same, yet older somehow, sharper, as if the shadow in his eyes had begun to take form. Draco returned from the holidays a few days later. His usual swagger, dimmed by an unease he tried to hide. When he saw Harry, he froze. "You look different," he said finally. "More like you belong here." Harry smirked faintly. Finally, understand what it means to be Slytherin. But Draco wasn't convinced. There's something else, he pressed. Something under your skin. You've been doing more than studying. Harry met his gaze steadily. I'm learning what the castle wants to teach me. Draco frowned. The castle doesn't teach, Potter. It tests. For a moment, Harry felt anger flash through him. Hot and instinctive. But he forced it down. You wouldn't understand, he said quietly. Maybe not, Draco replied. But whatever you're dealing with, it's changing you. And not in a good way. The words stung. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. That night, Harry dreamed again of the chamber. The serpent awaited him, its eyes burning brighter than ever. The boy doubts you, it hissed. He fears what he cannot comprehend. But tell me, Hare, do you fear what you are becoming? Harry hesitated. I don't know what I'm becoming. The serpent coiled closer, its gaze unblinking. Then, that is your lesson. To master power, you must know its shadow. You must face yourself. The chamber darkened, the air thickening with magic. And when Harry looked down, he saw his reflection in the polished stone. Eyes glowing green, a faint smile curving his lips. When he woke, the words wouldn't leave him, face yourself. Over the following days, his control began to slip in subtle ways. Books fell from shelves. When his emotions flared, candles extinguished. When he grew angry, and his voice, when speaking Parseltongue, sometimes echoed with something that wasn't entirely human. Even Snape noticed. After a particularly tense potions class, Snape stopped him as the others filed out. You're slipping, he said quietly. Whatever strength you've found, it's starting to take more than it gives. Harry glared. You don't understand. On the contrary, Snape replied, his voice low. I understand better than you think. Power whispers. It promises control. But in the end, it always demands something in return. Harry wanted to argue. But the truth in Snape's words silenced him. He went to the chamber. Once more. Driven by both desperation and defiance. You lied to me, he said into the darkness. You said power obeys will. But it's changing me. The serpent's voice filled the chamber. Softer this time. Almost pitying. Change is not corruption. You are not becoming someone else. You are becoming whole. You cannot wield light without knowing the dark that balances it. Then what am I supposed to do? Harry demanded. The voice hissed. Learn to command it. Do not flee from your shadow. Make it bow. And so began his most dangerous training yet. The serpent taught him how to draw upon his inner shadow, to use his fear and anger as focus rather than weakness. The process was grueling, tearing at the edges of his mind. Each lesson left him drained, trembling, but stronger. He learned to still his thoughts until his magic responded like a heartbeat to call light and darkness with equal ease. One night, during a final test, the serpent conjured an illusion. His own reflection, twisted and mocking. You think you can control me? It sneered. You are me. The reflection raised a wand, casting a curse Harry had never heard before. Instinct took over. Harry raised his hand without speaking, and a shield of black, green energy erupted between them, swallowing the spell whole. The chamber fell silent. The reflection smiled faintly, then dissolved into smoke. The serpent's voice returned, proud and low. You have faced yourself, heir. Remember, this balance is not peace. It is understanding. When Harry left the chamber that night, dawn was breaking over the lake. The world washed in pale gold. He felt hollow and whole all at once, as though a part of him had finally awakened. But there was something new, too. A constant presence, faint but undeniable, like the whisper of a second heartbeat. The shadow within him was no longer separate, it lived in harmony with his light. Over the next days, even Draco could sense it. You seem calmer, he said one morning, watching Harry across the great hall. What happened? Harry smiled slightly. I stopped fighting myself. Draco frowned, but said nothing. As weeks passed, Harry's magic grew subtler, yet more potent. When he cast, the air itself seemed to pause. Professors whispered among themselves. Dumbledore watched him more closely, his blue eyes twinkling with something between pride and worry. And through it all, the serpent's final words from the chamber echoed in Harry's mind, as eternal as the castle itself. The shadow within is not your enemy. It is your reflection. Embrace it, or be consumed by it. For the first time, Harry understood. Power wasn't something to be feared or denied. It was a mirror, revealing the truth of who he was. As he stood beneath the moonlight that night, the snow reflecting the green glow of the Slytherin torches, he whispered to the air, to the castle, to himself. I am both the light and the shadow. The words hung there, shimmering like magic. Somewhere deep below, in the chamber that had shaped him, the serpent stirred and whispered one final time, its voice proud, ancient, and eternal. Then you are ready, heir. The air at Hogwarts had grown heavy, as though the castle itself sensed what was coming, as though every portrait, stone and shadow held its breath. In uneasy silence, the dawn that rose over the black lake was pale and cold. But within the walls of Slytherin House, a storm was brewing. A storm that had a name. Harry Potter. He stood before the mirror in the common room. His reflection, no longer that of the uncertain boy, who once trembled beneath the sorting hat. His eyes gleamed with a calm, dangerous power, the mark of someone who had walked through darkness and returned not unscathed, but reborn. The serpent's teachings had become more than lessons. They were a part of him now. Whispering softly beneath his heartbeat, guiding his will, shaping his destiny. Every spell he cast hummed with a new resonance, deep and commanding, as if the very magic of Hogwarts had begun to bend toward him. And yet, behind that power, a shadow moved. An old, ancient consciousness, awakening from slumber, recognizing in Harry something it had waited for: balance. As the castle stirred with morning light, Dumbledore's voice echoed across the great hall, calling for an emergency assembly. The air was tense. Students whispering nervously as they gathered. Something had happened. Something beyond ordinary fear. The Chamber of Secrets had opened again. When Harry entered the hall, silence fell like a curtain. Whispers chased his every step. Some in awe, others in dread. Dumbledore stood at the podium, his expression grave, his eyes flickering toward Harry with quiet understanding. The chamber has been unsealed, he announced. And this time, the creature within has not merely stirred. It has chosen. The words rippled through the hall, confusion and terror twisting into a storm of voices. But Harry already knew. He had felt it in his dreams the night before. A call, deep and ancient, resonating with his very soul. The serpent had not betrayed him. It had summoned. Before Dumbledore could continue, Harry rose from his seat. "I'll go," he said. Simply. The teachers protested, but Dumbledore lifted a hand. "He knows what he faces," he said softly, his gaze steady on Harry's. As the great hall erupted in murmurs, Harry turned and walked out, the green of his robes trailing, like a shadow of destiny behind him. Draco tried to follow, his voice urgent. "You don't have to prove anything, Potter." But Harry only smiled faintly. "I'm not proving anything, Draco. I'm finishing what was started." The descent into the Chamber of Secrets was different this time. The tunnels no longer felt like a maze. They felt like veins pulsing with the same energy that coursed through his own magic. The walls shimmered faintly, whispering as he passed. When he reached the main chamber, the torches flared to life of their own accord. The great serpent statue loomed before him, ancient and imposing. "You have returned." The voice hissed from the shadows, deep and resonant. The basilisk slithered into view, its golden eyes half-lidded, respectful. "Hair of balance," it hissed, bowing its massive head. Harry felt the truth bloom within him like fire. "I'm not just the heir of Slytherin," he said quietly. "I'm something new." The serpent's tongue flickered, tasting the air around him. "The prince who walks both light and dark," it said reverently. "The one the founders foresaw." From the darkness behind the statue, a second presence stirred. A shape made of memory and magic. The echo of Riddle, his spectral form, more solid than before. "So, it's true," Riddle said softly, his smile cruel and cold. "The serpent found a new master. How poetic that it chose the boy who destroyed me." Harry stood his ground, his voice steady. "You're just a shadow of what once was." Riddle's eyes narrowed. "A shadow can still consume the light." With a flick of his hand, the chamber trembled, and the basilisk hissed in warning. Spells erupted, in a storm of color and fury, ancient words echoing off the stone. Riddle's dark magic struck like lightning, but Harry's wand moved with instinctual precision, channeling both shadow and light in a fluid dance. The chamber became a blur of green and gold, of fire and serpent. Song. When Riddle summoned a serpent of pure shadow, Harry Coo